Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Cloverly Academy. My name is Sophia Wardell, and today we have a very special guest, New York Times best-selling picture book author, Pat Zietlow Miller. Pat started out as a newspaper reporter and then moved to editing newsletters and magazines for an insurance company. Pat is now a full-time picture book author. She has written 20-plus picture books, one of which is a New York Times bestseller. Thanks for joining us today, Pat.
Oh, I'm happy to be here.
We're so happy to have you. And today I want to talk all about writing children's books with you because you are quite an expert. And now, Pat, where does most of your inspiration for your children's books come from?
Well, two spots usually. One is I've always been like a really curious person. And so I tend to notice little things and kind of like keep them stored in my memory. And then they pop up in my children's books a lot. And I think anybody who walks around noticing like the weird socks that somebody's wearing or the funny way someone phrased something could be a really good writer because that's where most things come from. And then my youngest daughter has inspired like four of my books. She's 23 now, so she probably won't be inspiring anymore. But when she was a kid, she was like delightfully quirky. And so four of my books came like straight from her.
That's super cute. You can get great inspiration from the people you know, especially family.
Yeah.
Now, what could authors learn from reading other children's books?
Oh my gosh, so much. When I started out, I went to the library and I checked out like every book written by all my favorite children's book authors. And I sat on the floor in my living room and the books were stacked like taller than my head. And I just read them because you learn pacing, you learn how to tell an effective story, you learn where to add humor, you learn how to use like the bare minimum of words for maximum effect. And so you can read picture books for fun, but if you read them and study them, it's like your brain's this big sponge and it soaks it all up. And then you sit down to write, and everything you've absorbed just kind of comes out.
Yeah, the people that have done it before, and
Yeah, you got to learn from the
inspiration.
best.
Yep,
It doesn't even cost
inspiration.
you anything.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Now, I want to talk a little bit about your illustrations because they're fabulous. Now, could you walk us through your process of finding your illustrator, hiring them, and just kind of working with them?
Sure. Well, I'm traditionally published, so the publisher hires the illustrator. I sometimes they'll send me like three websites and say, "Here's the people we're considering. Do you have a preference?" And then I'll weigh in. Um, and usually like they have art directors and that's their specialty. So everybody they send me is amazing. But then what most people don't know when you're traditionally published is the author and the illustrator work very separately. So the illustrator was not hanging over my shoulder while I was writing, giving me plot points and correcting my punctuation. So I'm not hanging over their shoulder while they're drawing. I do see sketches along the way, like pencil sketches and then color proofs. And so if I see like a factual error, I can weigh in, or if there's something in the art that I find confusing, I can weigh in. But usually I just say, that looks awesome. And then you get the color proofs. And that's like my favorite part of the process because you get to see how someone took your story and like expanded on it and added all this cool stuff to it. Um, I've met some of my illustrators. I've become friends with some of my illustrators. Some I've never met because they live in like Colombia or Korea. Um, but it's one of my favorite parts of the process because it's really, and my most recent illustrator, Jerry Jordan, said this, so I'm stealing this from him. He said it's like the writer, the illustrator, and the child reader all come together and make the story. Like they each bring something that's vital to the story.
That's a great point, and what fun it is to just kind of let the expert kind of do their thing, and then you give a stamp of approval or feedback because it is your story, but they do know how to draw.
Oh, exactly. And I've had illustrators add little things in there that I never would have thought of, like Sophie Squash. There's a cat on every page, and you just by looking at the cat, you can tell kind of the mood of what's going on. There's no cat in my story, but it's in the art and it adds a lot.
How fun. Yeah, that creative license is great. Now, Pat, I want to talk lastly just a little bit about how important is it for an aspiring children's author to learn about the industry before trying to push or publish their children's book?
Well, children's book publishing, I think, is one of the more confusing industries out there because there's so many ways you can do it. You can self-publish, you can pursue traditional publication, you can go with some sort of a subsidy publication. And so most people who are starting out to talk to me don't even know like the different paths. And so I've got to say, well, what are your goals? Um, and then I have to explain what is self-publishing. There's a woman named Jane Friedman, and she's got a chart on our website. It's also on my website that breaks down every possible path to publishing, the pros and the cons. And so I'm always giving people that chart because usually you'll look at it and path will resonate with you more. Like either, yeah, this is what I want to do, or this isn't. And they all have pros and cons. So I think if you go in not knowing, you have a much higher risk of not getting the outcome that you want. You know, I've run into a couple people who, you know, thought they were doing it the way they wanted and then realized they weren't. And then suddenly they had books that had no ISBN number on them. So then nobody could stock them in their store. Or they had the books printed and then they said, well, now how do I get Random House to pick them up? Well, if they're printed already, Random House isn't going to pick them. So you have to know. And it's a lot of research, but it's all out there, on the internet or talking to
Right.
people.
And so, in your opinion, there is such a thing as submitting work too soon.
Oh, absolutely. I think all writers do it. I know I had one book that I was sure was going to be my first published book, and I submitted it enthusiastically. I look back at now and it's embarrassing because you don't know what you don't know. You think you're ready, and part of the way you find out if you're not is by submitting too soon and getting rejected. But if you self-publish, you find out by publishing and having not much happen with it. So
Well, Pat, thank you so much. That was wonderful insight on writing children's books.
thank you.
Lastly, where can our listeners find and connect with you?
Oh, I'm online, www.zietlowmiller.com, and I've got a whole page of my website for aspiring writers. I'm also on social media, Instagram, X, TikTok, LinkedIn, all the places, either at Pat Z Miller or at Pat Z Mill.
That's all the time we have for today. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to today's interview with New York Times bestselling picture book author Pat Zietlow Miller. Be sure to check out our website for more videos. Wishing you all a fulfilling and successful writing journey.